Hi, everybody. I'm excited today because we have Herbert from Franklin University of Switzerland, and he's going to share more about this institution with us, which I'm thrilled about because this is actually a school that I wanted to know so much more about. And I'm happy that you're here. Thank you for taking the time to chat with us today.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me. All right, so why don't we get right on into it? So this is Franklin University, Switzerland. This basically is an American university located in Switzerland, but we're going to get to all of the juicy details here. I'd like to first start the presentation with a photo of the city of Lugano, where the university is located, so you can get a little bit of a teaser as to what the environment looks like in that area. So in the foreground there at the bottom of the picture, you can see one of our primary academic buildings. And so we are in a sort of suburban area of the city of Lugano, only about 20 minutes walk from the downtown area. So it's really close. But as you can see, it's breathtaking and gorgeous. So this is a wonderful place to be, and we're going to show you all the great stuff about it. So briefly, to give an introduction to the university, the university started as a college in Switzerland in 1969. So to us in the United States, that means really no difference from college to university. We use those terms interchangeably, but in Europe, they are very, very different in terms of what capacities they have and what things they're allowed to do. So for example, in the US, a college or university can both give you a degree that is equal, right? Whereas in the European context, only a university can offer a post-secondary degree. A college would perhaps be, in some places, a trade school or a community college, for example. But to preface that, we have always held a very high academic standard, and we have not changed since then. But the Swiss have very specific legal requirements as to what an institution can be called in their country. So we went through about a few decades long application process to achieve Swiss accreditation, which means that we are now legally allowed to call ourselves a university in that context. What that translates to for students that are attending is that they are getting a duly accredited degree, both from the United States, which we have had our accreditation from since our inception and have held that high academic standard ever since. And now we are also getting that accreditation from the Swiss. So what we'll get into more specifically is how that can give you benefits later on. But very briefly, what that translates to is that your degree is now seen as equal to that of any other Swiss university, which means that that translates for you to apply for graduate programs and jobs almost anywhere in the world, because there aren't too many countries that won't recognize it, both a US and Swiss degree. So that's just a bit of a preface there to tell you a little bit about our history. At its very structure, we are an American university. So this is the 4-year degree plan, unlike the 3-year degree plan of the European style. We also have, we're also instructed in English, so students are not expected to know Italian because we are in the Italian region of Switzerland. There are 3 primary languages, of course: German, French, and Italian, but there are very many people in the country that speak English, so you're not required to speak a different language in order to come to the university. It's not also reviewed as a part of the admissions process. So we are a rather small institution compared to many that you would see in the United States, standing at about 400 students total, but we are wildly international. So we have almost 60 countries represented. We only have about half of our students coming from North America in general. So you will be attending the university with students from very many places all over the world. So it's a really, really unique place to be able to get to know individuals from all over the place. There are over 30 languages that are spoken on campus, but everybody has to speak English as a common language for them to attend the courses, because once again, they are instructed in that language. Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to ask, do you attract students from the United World Colleges because you're so globally diverse? Do you have students coming from some of those schools?
We have students coming from all over the place. And in fact, I think it was just last year, we were actually accepted with the accreditation boards in China as well. So we are now seeing increases of applications basically from all over the place. Our world prestige is growing, as it were, because of that university accreditation that we recently received in Switzerland. So to answer your specific question, I don't know that specific answer, but we do get people from all over the place from many different contexts.
That's great. Thank you.
So we are in the heart of Western Europe, so that means you will be in a different culture coming from a place like the United States. The population of the region, of the city itself, is about 60,000 in terms of residents, but it swells up to around 100,000 during the day, with people coming in and out for business and travel when it's safe to do so, of course. The easiest ways to get to Lugano is by two flights, typically, either going to Milan, which is about an hour south of us, and Zurich is about 2 hours north. Now, globally and contextually, I would suggest people fly into Zurich at this point. Switzerland is the safest country in the world right now, so that does help us out quite a bit. And to answer specific questions, I've been getting very recently about how COVID has affected our campus and community and what we're doing this fall. I can tell you that because Switzerland is so safe, we are going to be full-time in person this upcoming semester. That now we are because the Swiss are having a mandatory 10-day quarantine period for anybody coming in. Students that are coming in will have a required student visa that is issued from the Swiss government, so they are not going to be hassled by any stretch, because we have seen to situations where parents that traditionally have come to help move their students in are not able to this year because of travel restrictions, but the Swiss student visa will override that and allow the students to be able to come in without any hassle whatsoever. So as long as they're coming in for the move-in dates, we're able to accommodate for that 10-day mandatory quarantine on campus, able to deliver to their room their food from the dining halls and everything like that. Lugano has done very well in terms of developing delivery services for groceries and for any other accommodations that students are needing. So our campus and our advisors and our support staff are able to accommodate those students very well for that period of time. Now, because the quarantine will overlap with the starting dates of classes, we will have, for the first part of the term, virtual courses. So students are able to take part in the quarantine and be able to take part in their courses simultaneously. So there's really no restrictions in terms of being able to get our students to campus, assuming that they follow all the rules for the visa application process. But we can talk about all those things later on. And to be fair, we've never actually had a U.S. student been denied a visa, so we do maintain a very strong and positive relationship with the Swiss immigration authorities. Now, the currency is going to be very different from the United States. It is the Swiss franc, but currently it is about a one-to-one translation from the power of the currency. So it's not too much of a difference at this point. Now, that could change because currencies change a lot, but that's okay. We are in the third financial capital of Switzerland, so you're not going to be in the middle of nowhere without any access to technology or anything like that. You are in a very big hub for business, for trade, for finance, and when it's safe, of course, for vacations and traveling. So you're in a very, very good spot in the country. And you will, honestly, in my opinion, be ruined on Italian food coming back to the United States because it's so great out there. They have wonderful handmade Italian pastas from in the region. And for those of you who have not been to Switzerland, the cultural influences are very unique. The French side has a lot of French influence on the western side of the country. The northern and eastern side is influenced by the Germans, and the southern side is influenced by the Italian culture too. So there's lots of really cool things you get to expose to being out there in the country. Now, we do have about 20 different types of majors and academic programs at our university. So basically, you'll have lots of opportunities to explore different types of study. The only things that we don't provide are things like engineering, computer science, like a chemistry major, for example. But you can see here that the focuses of the university are primarily in the humanities and the social sciences. Some popular majors tend to be things like, in no particular order, environmental science, international business, banking, finance, communications, media studies, history, psychology. So many of the popular programs that are done in the United States. You are on the American semester system, so you are able to have a flexible schedule that accommodates for things like a double major, having multiple minors, perhaps studying a language. We do offer French, German, and Italian for foreign languages in order for you to be able to pick up on some of those different things and pursue those different options. But you can see here the breadth of the offerings for the programs that we have. We do have some minors as well, and as of this fall, we have launched a pre-med and pre-law track for students to follow in their training for those programs as well. So students are able to pursue those types of things in their goals for what they're trying to achieve later on after their time spent at Franklin. We do, as a U.S. school, have lots of resources and student support services on campus. So if you have specific questions about accommodations of any type, you can feel free to ask those types of questions. But we do our best to try and accommodate as best we can for our student body. So one of the most unique elements about the university that really helps sets us apart in the world, in my opinion, is what we call academic travel. So as I mentioned, we are on the American semester system, which means, of course, 5 classes at a time, 3 credit hours per course, but one course each semester is called an academic travel course, which will incorporate 2 weeks of travel to a different country to study that subject, the costs of which are included in the tuition. So students are not having to break the bank every semester in order to experience these types of things. To mention how it's going to work this year, there are different options and things are changing as we're getting more information from the Swiss health boards and the World Health Organization. But the traditional style of things, when safety is first of all the #1 concern, but the traditional thing that happens is that they're basically able to go almost anywhere in the world, assuming that there's not any political strife going on. Our professors are very well globally aware, so they're not going to take students into a hazardous area. And there are always backups as well. So for example, this year, if there are health concerns where we cannot do travel outside of the country of Switzerland, there is a Swiss travel option for each of these courses. And then if it goes to the extreme as it did in the previous semester, where everybody basically had to be on campus or go home, we will have virtual options available as well, and we can talk about that if you have questions. But these are designed and led by the faculty, so these are sort of in a way a mini sabbatical and trip for these people to be able to expose the students to how this information takes place both contextually in the classroom and boots on the ground in that environment. So for example, to study tourism and its impact on the environment, a student might take environmental studies as it goes to Iceland to see how that stuff is impacting and doing boots on the ground research in that area. And these are also non-major specific, so that means that as long as you meet the prerequisite requirements, a business major can take that environmental science course, or they can also take the Business in London class. So you can take basically 1 each semester, so you have guaranteed built-in 8 travel experiences throughout your time at Franklin. And each of these are credit bearing, so you are still working towards your academic goals as you're pursuing these opportunities. But I think you can see that the through line for each of the things that we're trying to accomplish here is to develop a sense of global, international, and intercultural exposure and experience to really give a student a sense as to how all of these things are working, both as an academic and in terms of how it works in the real world.
That's
and there are
incredible.
about 20 different offerings per semester, so you have lots of options.
Yeah, it's amazing because so many students, are itching to have those off-campus or international experiences, but often need to wait until their sophomore year to even be able to do that. So to be able to do that right off the bat as a freshman, that's great.
Starting your first term, that's right. And because we're on the semester system, students can still participate in that traditional study abroad experience if they wanted to go somewhere else or have that, or if they're coming from a different university and just wanted to have a short-term period at Franklin, that is able to be accomplished at the same time. So to give you some examples as to what we can do for your first year experience, one of the things that we try to do to accommodate for students for example, who have not had international travel experience, who perhaps their parents might be a little bit concerned as to how is my child going to get to a different country? Well, we do something called group flight. Unfortunately, couldn't do it this year for obvious reasons, but traditionally we're able to help accommodate those students by us in the admissions office. There are 3 of us, one for the East Coast, my colleague Katie. I'm doing this, I am responsible for the Central United States, and my colleague Jessica, who is responsible for the West Coast. We meet with students at an airport in, for example, LA. I do either Chicago or Denver typically, and Katie might do, for example, JFK in New York. And so we'll tell the families, hey, we're going to be at these particular areas, and these are our flights. We won't buy the ticket for you, but if you would like an escort to campus, we'll help you get there. So we'll typically fly into a place like Zurich, for example, where the university will rent a couple of buses to help ship everybody down to campus. So that way, students will be able to be accommodated if they have concerns traveling, or if they've never done it before. But it's also a really good way for students to get to know each other and have a bit of a mini adventure before getting to campus. As I mentioned previously, we do have 8 residence halls on campus, so students are not expected to have, find their own accommodation, as it were, as is the case for many European universities. But we also try to accommodate for students to get them acclimated to the environment, giving them access to tours around the city and getting them an introduction to what it's going to be like at the school. So we do have accommodations on campus, as I mentioned. These are not dorms. The Swiss didn't know how to make dorms, and we thank them for that. So basically, these are residence halls. Think of these as off-campus apartments, traditionally as they would be seen in the United States. Anything from singles up to 5 people in the suite. So in between that, typically doubles and triples. Most of these accommodations will have kitchens. They'll have private bathrooms, so you're not going to be sharing a hall of 50 people with a communal bathroom. That doesn't happen at our university. These are basically just, as you would see, off-campus apartments on campus for us. And you are guaranteed housing all 4 years. You're not required to stay on campus outside of your first year. And we have about 5% or so of our students that live off campus each year. But it's not typically something that most students pursue, primarily because there are a couple of other applications and documents you have to sign for permits for living in, because we have to deal with the Swiss government here. So it's not just a matter of, I'm just going to find an apartment off campus. You have to file some documentation. It's not hard, but those extra steps really prevent a lot of students from doing it. Plus, our accommodations on campus are so good that most students just don't think about living off campus anyway. And because we're so close to downtown, it's really something that students can take part in the downtown festivities as well as being on campus very easily. So here's a brief photo or a picture of the campus in terms of what the layout looks like. We do have 2 campuses technically, but they're only about a 5 to 10 minute walk in between each of them. So you're really not having to catch a bus to get all the way across the city for where you're at. The highlighted buildings are the residence halls. So you can see that they're right there on campus and very easily able to get to each side of the campus if you have classes on either end. But that's just a brief introduction as to what the campus layout looks like. And on each campus, you will have dining hall, residence halls, professor offices, computer labs, libraries, everything like that. So as you can see here, we have our traditional 4-year degree bachelor program, but we also have some flexible options for example, an expedited 3-year bachelor's degree. We do have about 20% of our students who graduate in about 3 years. You are able to bring in things like AP courses, IB credits, previous college courses, all of those things to help you graduate early if that's what your goal is. But we also have partnerships with universities all over the United States. And a couple of programs highlighted out of this were, for example, the 2+2 or the 3+1 with Emerson in Boston. So basically, this would be a program where you would pursue a particular type of degree plan. For example, global political bachelor's with Emerson, where you would do 2 years at Franklin, actually graduating with your associate's degree, and then doing your remaining 2 years graduating with your bachelor's from Emerson and taking courses from both universities. And so you are able to bring over your financial aid from both institutions, and both institutions will review your application simultaneously. So there's no hassle. As long as you maintain your positive GPA, you're able to then transfer over to that other institution. We also have such things as called the 3+1, where you would, for example, if you wanted to do a business master's in 4 years, you could do a 3+1 at Franklin, where you would do a 3-year bachelor's in one of our business related programs, and then your 1-year master's at our university to graduate with your master's in 4 years. And we also, as I mentioned, have study abroad opportunities. So if students don't want to spend their whole 4 years at Franklin, that's totally fine too. Students are able to come to Franklin for a semester or a year and have those credits transfer back very much one-to-one with institutions in the United States. And then, of course, gap year and summer programs as well. So there's lots of opportunities to really explore academic and social atmospheres in the city of Lugano and at Franklin. In terms of the application requirements, think of us as any traditional US program. We're on the Common Application, so it's very easy to find us. You will submit your requirements throughout as you would any other institution, your transcripts, your letters of recommendation, and so on. We are test optional and have been for several years now, so thankfully the global circumstances have not affected us in that capacity. The way I like to think about it is if a student has done very well on the application or on the test, and they want us to use it as a piece of consideration for admissions, then go ahead and send it to us. But if they don't, then that's fine. They're not going to be penalized in any way. And it's just an extra piece if they want us to consider it. One of the other things I like to mention, however, is that if you apply early, so we have early action, not early decision, so there's no contractual obligation there. Early action is usually by December 1st. And so if a student applies before that and is accepted, then they could potentially be put in for an additional $1,000 travel scholarship to help get to campus. So an incentive to apply early, as it were. In terms of the application review process itself, it is a holistic review process. So for those of you who may or may not know what that is, basically we take into account every piece of the application. So we want to make sure that we are looking at the whole person in the application review process. You can see average scores there in terms of what competitive scores for admission typically are in each of those different capacities. But of course, we accept a wide range of scores depending on different factors. In terms of cost of attendance, I like to show a breakdown so you see specifically what things look like, and you can see them in both US context in terms of if you're coming from Europe, what that looks like. So this is basically what those costs are. We have about 70% of our students receive scholarships and financial aid, so there are lots of ways to help pay for it. The way I like to think about this is if a student is considering applying for an out-of-state public college in the United States or a private school anywhere in the US, our costs are going to be the same, if not even significantly less than, depending on where you're looking. And because we do award students based on their academic pursuits in their high school career, when you do get the full breakdown of your financial aid package, the costs are very competitive in terms of out-of-pocket expenses. We have very many different types of financial aid and assistance to help students out. Because we are a US accredited institution, the FAFSA does apply. So federal government assistance can come over the sea or over the pond, as it were. So we do have merit scholarships at the very front end of the application process. So when a student does apply, we simultaneously review them for both admission and scholarship. So there's no separate application for those two. So if a student does get their acceptance letter, on the acceptance letter itself, it will say something like, "Welcome to the Franklin family, and here's your merit scholarship." We do have an EU discount. So if a student does have dual citizenship with an EU country, or they have Swiss citizenship, something like that, or an EEA, they basically will be able to qualify for half off tuition. And so in terms of outcomes, we have students that go off and do things all over the world, and that is not an exaggeration. As I mentioned, because of that dual accreditation, it's very easy for other countries to accept our students in terms of their application toward that particular career path or for graduate programs. You can see some of the examples of companies, organizations, and graduate schools there on the page. And our students are able to very much get jobs in their fields very easily. And if you think about it, when you're putting on your resume Franklin University, Switzerland, that's already going to spark conversations and questions about your experience, not to mention the fact that you're literally getting international business experience with each of the different types of majors that you're studying. So having studied business in London and in Germany, and you're getting, if you're wanting to get into banking, for example, and you do your internship at a local Swiss bank, that's going to look very good on your applications toward things back in the United States, for example, or if you wanted to stay in Switzerland or pursue a career in a different country. We have about 40% of our students that do pursue a master's or a PhD within about 1 to 3 years after graduation. So our students are very well apt in terms of getting their graduate degree programs accommodated and pursuing those goals. So this brings us to sort of the end of the presentation here. Here is some of the contact information for my colleagues and myself. So if you have specific questions, I'm very happy to help you out or to direct you to someone who can answer the question if I can't.
I have a quick question, Harry.
Yes,
So
go right ahead.
in the outcomes, is it common for students to go on who are not doing obviously one of the like the 3+1 or one of those kinds of programs? Do you find that students are they coming back if they're from the U.S.? Are they coming back to the U.S. and going on to graduate schools? I saw that there, I saw some schools listed there. Is that common? Is
Oh,
that
absolutely, yes. It's very easy for our students to pursue law school, med school, all of those types of things when they get back to the United States. Yes.
And in terms of the social component of campus, with a small student population, and I should, as a disclaimer, I went to a small school, not as small as Franklin, but small, and I had a great experience. But I often have students who say, gosh, if I go to a small place, am I giving up something when it comes to the social piece? Can you talk a little bit more about what keeps Franklin students busy? What are they doing outside of academics and
Yeah.
travel, obviously, which are two big things, but are
Well,
there
yeah.
other things that are highlights of the social experience at Franklin?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, I have to mention travel, even though you already mentioned it, because it is such an integral part of the campus experience. Students come to Franklin because they have access to the world from there, really. And because we're in the heart of Western Europe, it makes it easy for a student to go to Paris for the weekend for a $30 plane ticket, for example. So it makes it super easy to travel. I spoke with a young man who came to campus for only a semester, and he traveled to almost 30 different countries while he was out there. It just makes it that easy. In terms of other experiences, basically, we try to accommodate as best as we can for clubs and organizations. So we have things like student newspapers, student government. There's a drama club. We have a soccer field on campus. Athletics is very different in Europe. So there is no NCAA. You're not competing against other universities, but our students can pursue athletics in a competitive element. They're just trying out for the professional and semi-pro teams. So, for example, we have a student on campus right now who is doing pre-Olympic training for swimming. So he is basically doing his training and going to school simultaneously. So it is very possible to do those types of things, just in a different capacity. Intercultural clubs are also very popular. Really, because we're getting so many students from different parts of the world, a lot of it is just intercultural experiences and really developing a sense of a global community. They call it the Franklin family for a reason. It's very common, for example, for, let's say, for example, a student from the United States can't afford to come home for Christmas or summer break. Well, you can't be on campus because of Swiss regulations, but let's say your roommate is from Spain. It's very common for them to say, well, just come home with me and meet my family for that particular period of time. So students go out and they pursue just different elements of exploration around the area, whether that's travel, whether that's culturally, maybe they're going to go see an opera. We're right next to Italy, right? So maybe not right now, but you know what I'm trying to say. So yes, it's a lot of exploration and intercultural experiences.
So if we have students who are interested in learning more about Franklin during current times,
yeah,
reaching out to those admission representatives, is that the best way for them to do it? And then what are the opportunities for exploring the school from afar in terms of opportunities for interaction with current students remotely? Is there any of that, or faculty, are there opportunities for any of those kinds of things?
absolutely. Yes, we in admissions can help to answer any questions that you might have, but we also have been doing a lot of Zoom webinars with people on campus right now, whether that's professors, current students, faculty, professors and faculty, the same thing, but you know what I mean, administration, support staff. So for example, we recently had a webinar with our VP of the university, the Dean of Students, and about 5 current students. So to have parents ask different questions and figure out what it is like to be on campus right now. So yes, we are trying to do accommodations as best as we can. We also have a virtual tour. So if students want to explore but can't get there right now, then it's very easy to look through all of our residence halls and campus buildings so you can see what the community looks like, sort of boots on the ground virtually.
So is there anything that I didn't ask that you think would be important to ask, that, or anything that you want to share that isn't part of the data and the factual kind of stuff? Any other impression type things that you think is important to know?
Yeah, I think that to your point about going to a small institution, you're really not missing out as many people might think initially. Um, Although we are small in number, they are very close knit. And so the sense of community is very strong on campus. And what that translates to is just a sense of, well, anywhere I go in the world, I have a place to stay because of the different places that people are coming from. And I can tell you that they really do treat each other as a family. That's not like a cliche, the Franklin family, this is what we're marketing as. That's what they tell me that they are. So this sense of community really helps to develop a student academically and socially and just in terms of their career moving forward. So these people really do help each other out every step along the way. In terms of other things too, you're literally traveling the world with your professors and your fellow students. So you're developing very strong personal relationships with each of these people. So that means they are going to take care of you. In terms of other questions, a lot of people ask me, what does it take to prepare to get into the university? The way I like to think about it is just take challenging courses to the best of your ability. We are a very writing focused school. We don't take Scantron ABCD tests on our university campus. So students are expected to write very well. At the same time, we also take into consideration international interests. So a student may or may not have traveled before. That's not a requirement, but we like to see, are they interested in something on a global scale? So are you interested in art or history or whatever it might happen to be? These students have to have some sort of an international focus of some kind. We don't have a football team. So if a student's coming to say, well, I want to go to a 40,000 person football stadium every Saturday, well, we don't have that on our campus. We do have, well, football means something different over there. And we do have local professional teams out there, but it's just a very different experience. So we want to make sure that students that are applying are really understanding what it is they're getting into.
I love that. And I agree. I think there's, is, when you think about all of when you talk about the small piece of it, I think the family piece, you're right. It sounds cliche, but I think it's absolutely true when you're in a place like that, where, especially when you're getting the opportunity to do these things like travel with a small group, you really get to know people well, and not just, I would say, not just even your classmates, but your faculty, so then down the line, when you're looking for someone to maybe serve as a reference for you for something, whether it's employment or graduate school, they know you so much better, I think, which I think is also another great piece. So, well, thank you so much for sharing all of this information. This was so interesting. It makes me want to go. I love travel, and I think, oh my gosh, what a great experience that would be to be doing the travel experiences every single semester. I mean, that's incredible to me. I think that's so unique, and what a great opportunity for the right student, for students who are really passionate about that, and in all kinds of disciplines, not just, not any specific major either. I think all those majors really benefit from it. So I appreciate you taking the time today, Harry, to share information. Can you go back to the contact screen so we can end on that, in case there's people that would like to be able to just take a quick check of who the folks are? Is there an easy way on the website to be able to find out who the right contact would be for a certain student depending on where they're located?
Absolutely, yes. We try to make those accommodations based on region, and so on the website you should be able to search for your region and have each of us come up in terms of who is responsible for that particular area. So, for example, I'll explain very briefly. The individuals on the top of the screen there are located in Switzerland. So they are responsible for basically the rest of the world outside of North America. And so we on the bottom part of the screen are located in the United States. Our Director of Financial Aid is there on the bottom right, Sigrid. But the three of us that are in the admissions office in terms of reading applications are, once again, myself, Katie Carter, and Jessica Silva. Katie is the East Coast rep. I am the Central US rep, and Jessica is the East Coast rep, or sorry, West Coast, yes.
Perfect.
And Sammy basically oversees operations here in the U.S.
Got it. Okay, good. Well, thank you again. It was really great to learn all about this. And if anyone has questions, reach out to the appropriate folks here, and take advantage of this amazing opportunity to explore an institution like this. It's really, really incredible. So thanks so much, Harry. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.